So, our 14, 15-ish week series on the end of the age. So today, all the other ones that we're going to do, they're going to be really, more interactive. This is just setting some really basic ground rules and some bottom line foundational things so we can look at the rest. So I'll talk a little bit more this time, but we'll have time. You can interrupt me with questions anytime you want. So whenever people talk about the end times, they usually are focusing on the wrong thing. This subject is supposed to be encouraging. There's a reason why when I did like the advertising picture that I put up during the announcements on Sunday, I didn't put like walls of flame or meteors or anything like that, because the end times is about the end of this period and paradise beginning forever. I mean, that is good stuff. It is good news. It's what everyone's looking forward to. Paul says we're supposed to be looking for Jesus to come back. And that's not for Jesus to come back to get us the heck out of here before everything burns. It's Jesus is going to come back. He's going to fix everything. Like in the end, it's all going to be fixed. It's going to be wonderful. It's going to be good. The vision John gave us in Revelation 21 and 22, that's exciting. The thing Isaiah talked about in Isaiah 11 and Isaiah 65, it's very exciting. You'll be fixed. Your body will be fixed. Your aches and pains will be fixed. Your back will be fixed. Your cancer will be fixed. Your whatever will be fixed. This world will be fixed. I mean, we'll be with the Lord with no sin to block our way, no shame. I mean, it's beautiful, encouraging stuff. But too many Christians, when they think about the end times, they think of destruction, fire, Nikolai Carpathia. I mean, they think of these things of destruction. When I was going to church after I became a Christian, not on purpose, but like the end result, the big message seemed to be, the rapture's coming, so you better choose Jesus. Like the end times are supposed to be an encouraging thing. It's the blessed hope we're looking for. It's not like my mom used to do. It's like, your dad's gonna be home, and if you don't get everything done, then bad things will happen. That's not the point. So this is supposed to be encouraging. You have a difficult life. You're going through difficult times. You've had a difficult life. You feel shame or maybe guilt from past mistakes. Your body's tired or you hurt or what, if you're all this stuff that could be bothering you, that's your fault or this world's fault or whatever, you're a Christian, there's a better tomorrow coming. So that's why the end times is supposed to be encouraging. And that's what we're looking. So as we look at all these passages, like that's the goal. It's exciting stuff. It's what we're looking forward to. So no fire and brimstone. If you're a Christian, peace, paradise, perfect relationship with God, that's good stuff. A few warnings about this topic. There's two ditches that people fall into. One is they just never want to talk about it because everyone has really strong opinions. People usually don't have strong opinions about, technical things about Jesus. People usually don't have strong opinions about the Trinity. People usually don't have strong opinions about, justification by faith. The really important stuff, they have strong opinions about the timing of the rapture and what kind of millennial reign it'll be. And those are important things, but they're not nearly as important as, the things that define the gospel. So some people just don't ever want to talk about this kind of stuff. So that's one ditch. The other ditch is that's all people want to talk about is this stuff, right? That's like it. That's all they talk about. They do 100 sermons, a sermon series, 100 sermons long about, when the rapture is or something like this. I mean, it can go too far. And there's all sorts of examples about well-meaning teachers that have just gone way off the rails. Hal Lindsey published a lot of books, but one book, The 1980s Countdown to Armageddon. Well, oops. I mean, come on, just take it easy. Do you remember the blood moon thing like 10, 15 years ago? The blood moon fetish? Well, guess what? Not so it's
Wasn't it actually supposed to be a few days ago?
yeah, and then there was this internet silliness about, a few days ago or a week ago about how the rapture is supposed to be, I think, on the 23rd. It's so absurd. You know, I've used this illustration before, but I've said this a bunch of times, but when I first became the pastor here, I found a book in the church library with a picture of Saddam Hussein on the front. And the entire book was about how Saddam Hussein was the Antichrist because he's rebuilding Babylon. And of course, it was published in 1990, right before the Gulf War. And at that time it's 2018. And of course, you look at this, and you're like, well, how silly, people making weird speculations, focusing on things that aren't, trying to identify the Antichrist. I mean, come on, guys, come on. So it's, you can go, you never talk about it, or that's all, or you talk about it way too much, and you need to, as the kids would say, you need to go touch grass. You need to get outside, right? You need to get outside and just go for a walk or something. So
yeah, I remember a pastor at a different church I went to. He said, if you use modern events to interpret the scripture, you're setting yourself up to get off track.
Yeah, and this isn't a new thing. And anyone who's online can just jump in whenever you want. You don't have to wait for me to pause. Just unmute and speak if you want. But this isn't a new thing. I shared with a few people a week or so ago. I read this book about how to interpret the Bible. It's written by a really famous guy from like the late 1800s. And he was criticizing prophecy, people who were crazy about prophecy back then. And he was talking about a guy he knew. So this is like 1885. He's talking about a guy he knew who was convinced that the Confederate States of America was the kingdom of the Antichrist. And he wrote a book. He said, my crazy friend wrote this book. He became obsessed. He wrote a book about how Jefferson Davis was the Antichrist and everything. And, and he's like, well, of course it's ridiculous because now 30 years have gone by and, it's like 1880, 1890, and he's like, well, it wasn't true. So people have been doing this for a really long time. So we should talk about this when it comes up, but we shouldn't go crazy. So the two ditches there.
So does all that stuff just sell books,
Yeah,
make money,
well, of course.
etc.?
People get obsessed.
I think people are really interested.
Some of these preachers really believe they figured it out and no preacher is going to put, like the one about the blood moons and stuff.
Mhm.
No preacher is going to purposely put himself in with false prophecy.
Yeah, not knowingly.
Not knowingly. He honestly believed what he was presenting.
Yeah, so
Paul Lindsay was the same way.
yes, yeah. And he had a doctorate from Dallas Theological Seminary. He was an educated man. He was a very educated man, but you can just go off the rails, So don't go crazy. But this is a topic that people like to obsess over and can become imbalanced on. Another thing that I'll say is that we need to interpret the Bible in paragraphs, not sentences. And this is what I mean. No one would try and explain what a book is about, like a fiction book. Say you like Tom Clancy books or something. No one would think to explain what a book is about by taking 4 random sentences from random places in a 800-page book, right? Like that is, you need more context, and everyone knows that. But when it comes to the Bible, because all the sentences are numbered, we just rip sentences out without trying to do it out of context, but we end up taking sentences, and sometimes we take sentences from all over the place, or verses from all over the place, and we put them together and we say, see, look at the picture this is painting, when you've just taken random sentences from all over the Bible and you're putting them together with no context. So interpret the Bible by passages. So if you want to learn about a subject, the best way is to find a passage, like a chapter or something, where the author spends time deliberately talking about that thing. Not where there's one throwaway sentence where he mentions something, but he's really talking about something else, right? So I hope that makes sense. is what I'm saying. So like if you want to talk about, if you want to talk about salvation and your verse is John 3:16, and you just ignore, and instead of Romans, 1 through 8, then there's kind of you're missing out on a lot of stuff. One sentence versus 8 chapters. I mean, that's 8 chapters. That's all he talks about in his, excruciating detail. So what I'm saying is, if you believe in a doctrine of some sort, no matter what it is, make sure it's based on big chunks of scripture where it's talked about, not a Frankenstein monster scissor collection of a sentence here, a sentence here, a sentence here, a sentence here, and you put them all together and you're like, look what it teaches. You're like, well, is there a passage that teaches that? Or we just have a bunch of sentences scissored together? Maybe they're scissored together right, but maybe they're not. So passages or paragraphs, not individual random sentences.
That's like the fact that God puts a lot of emphasis on the things that are important for us to know. He repeats them over and over.
Yeah.
And so we have the example there that he's showing us. If it's important enough that he really wants us to know the details on it, he'll give them to us. They're not going to be.
Yeah, and I'll emphasize this a lot when we go through all those passages that we're going to do, in the weeks following. I'll emphasize that a lot, especially people make this mistake a lot with prophecy stuff. They really try and drill down and try and find like secret hidden nuggets of information that if you just take a step back and think about what the author's doing, that's not the point. Like I've read an author before. I remember years ago I was preaching through Zechariah, and in Zechariah 1, there's some horsemen with horses, and the horses are different colors. The author happens to mention that the horses are different colors. And I have read authors, like commentators, go on and just bloviate on and on about the significance of the color of one horse versus the other horse. And they just zoom in on like this little piece of tree bark and forget that, there's an entire forest here. And I don't think if the author thought that the color of one horse in Zechariah 1 was important, he probably would have spent some time talking about it, right? Like in Daniel, the details about the beasts are important because he talks about them. If it's not important, he's probably not going to talk about it much because God doesn't want to, it's not the point. So I hope that makes some sense, and I'll explain that as we go through the passages in the weeks to come. But I just wanted to throw that out there as like a principle to keep you sane and stop you from running off the rails when you interpret the Bible, no matter what you're trying to study. Make sure the passage is actually about what you're talking about. I could go on and talk about that, but I will not. I will not. Okay. So this is what I will do. I'm going to talk about just the bottom line stuff that all Christians must believe about how everything is going to pan out. And then there's controversy over 2 specific issues. I'll talk about some different ideas people have. And then next week, we'll start looking at a whole bunch of Bible passages, and we'll see if we can lay out what the evidence says, week by week as we go through these passages. So does anyone have any questions before I keep droning on? Want to talk about anything or clarify anything or whatever?
Well, whenever people get going on to timing, I mean,
Yeah.
Jesus very explicitly said, at least 2 places, nobody knows.
Yep.
The Father only.
That's true. Anyone else have anything they want to mention or talk about before we go on? Okay. So when we talk about the end times, so I'm going to talk about the bottom line basic stuff. When we talk about the end times, there's two categories of topics. One has to do with like the world, the universe, the heavens and the earth, big stuff. And the other category has to do with us, stuff about us. So I'm gonna split it into those two categories. So in a cosmic sense, like this world, the creation, what's going to happen and stuff like that. These are the three things. I don't have a PowerPoint, so we'll have to do this the old-fashioned way. These are the three things that every Christian just needs to believe. Number one, Jesus is going to actually come back here. Every Christian, no matter who they are, needs to believe that Jesus is actually going to return to earth. So I hope that's not controversial. Now I remember what I was going to say, but I didn't. I'll come back to it. Number one, Jesus is going to actually bodily, physically come back here. Doesn't matter whether you're a Methodist or a Presbyterian or a Baptist or a Nazarene or a Pentecostal or whatever. Jesus is going to actually literally come back. You look at all the creeds and all the confessions and all the stuff Christians of every color, tribe, and tongue have written everyone always believes Jesus is actually going to come back. So it is non-negotiable. No, Christians. Christians. Yeah, Christians of all kinds and all places. Real Christians have always confessed they believe Jesus is going to actually come back physically.
Even the Buddhists thought he was a prophet.
Yeah.
Well, my daughter,
And number two, when Christ comes back, he is going to rule and reign here on the earth. His kingdom will be here, and he's going to rule and reign.
That's a 1,000-year reign, right?
We'll talk about that.
Okay.
That's one of the disputed things. But no matter how long they think it is or all the details, everyone believes Jesus will come back and he will rule. So there it is. He will come back. He will rule. People have different ideas about what his kingdom looks like, if his kingdom is here in any way, or if it's not here, but it's going to come later. And so people quibble about that. But every Christian needs to believe that when Jesus comes back, he will rule and reign in his kingdom here. And number three, in the end, like the total end game, paradise and eternity, that in the end, God will create a new heaven and a new earth that will endure forever. Everyone believes that. Everyone, hazy on the details, or they have really, really detailed ideas about what that looks like and how it happens. But everyone believes, number one, Jesus is going to literally come back. Number two, when he comes back, he will establish or more fully implement his kingdom where he can rule and reign. And that three, there will be a new heaven and a new earth that will endure forever. Some people think this place is all going to be spiffed up and polished and fixed. Some people think it's all going to be tossed in the wastebasket and it's all going to be made new and perfect. That's what I think Peter, especially in 2 Peter, teaches. But those are the three things. So we can all get together on that. Does anyone have any questions? I'm not going to go into like crazy detail, but does anyone have any questions about those three things? Those are about the big picture, this world, this universe, big picture, cosmic like stuff, the bottom line, bare bones, basic stuff, those three things. Everyone is speechless. All right. All right. Let's see. Okay. Now we go to category 2. There are 4 things all Christians have always confessed about the last things for, related to people, to themselves and to other people. So we've gone from like the forest of the cosmic stuff down to like the trees here. 4 things. Number 1, there will be a resurrection of the living and the dead. Forget about the timing, forget about when and all these swirling controversies. Just everyone will be resurrected. Everybody. So that's number 1. Living and the dead, they will all be resurrected. Well, I guess the living won't be resurrected, but you get what I'm saying. Everyone will be resurrected. Number 2, there will be a judgment of the living and the dead. Jesus will judge. The great white throne, Revelation 20. There will be a final day of judgment. And it's not like Terminator 2 Judgment Day. It'll be Jesus's justice. So everyone will be resurrected. Everyone will face judgment from Jesus. Number 3, the eternal home of those who have Christ is in heaven. And just like Belinda Carlisle said, heaven is going to be a place on earth. No one ever gets that joke. I think it's pretty funny, but no one has ever laughed when I'm the funniest person I know, but I thought it doesn't.
Go goes.
That's why no one gets it. You're too holy to get it.
Would you repeat that again?
About Belinda Carlisle? No, I said the eternal home of everyone who loves Jesus is heaven.
I think you were the secular song in the 80s.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's from the 80s. It's from the 80s. No, it's the 80s. And number 4, the eternal home of those who do not have Christ is hell. So, like, none of this, I hope some of you are thinking, well, that's not very original. I mean, that is the bottom line thing. So, as long as everyone is good on that, there is room, there's enough, uncertainty about some things that there's room to argue about the details of how all those things happen. But there will be a literal physical resurrection of everyone. Yes. Number 2, every single person will be judged by Jesus on the last day. Yes. Number 3, if you have Jesus, your eternal home is in heaven. Number 4, if you do not have Jesus, your eternal home is in hell. That's it. That's the bottom line stuff. If you want, we're going to go through these passages when we, as we get to them. But for the cosmic stuff, the cosmic salvation, the 3 things, if you want to read Revelation 21 and 22, that'll give you most of what you're looking for. That talk about that. So if you just want, like, what can I read that gives me the just the facts, ma'am, stuff about those 3 things, about cosmic stuff in the end times, Revelation 21 and 22 will do it for you. And there might be details you don't understand. It's fantastic imagery, so interpret it that way. But I think no matter who you are, you'll be able to get the basic point, and it's good. It's encouraging. If you want a passage to read to get the bare bones, what's the skinny on the individual salvation stuff that I mentioned, 1 Corinthians 15, 20 to 58. 1 Corinthians 15, 20 to 58 will get you there, and you'll get the basics of the individual salvation stuff. And there's a lot more. There's a lot other passages too, but that's just, if you want a quick, where can I read about this? 1 Corinthians 15, 20 to 58. And these passages and more are the ones we're going to be, they're in the list of stuff to talk about when we, as we get to them, as we go through our passages.
Question.
Yeah.
So when we get judged as Christians, we are getting judged for our reward.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I
Yeah.
just want to make sure.
Like when your dad came home and you had to have, your mom or dad came home and you had chores you had to get done. You had responsibilities, and they come home and you didn't do them, or you did them halfway, or maybe you did them great. You'll be judged. Your parents judged you on how well you did your responsibilities. They're not going to they're not going to say you're not in the family anymore and kick you out on the curb and say bye and change the locks. They'll just simply judge you based on how obedient of a child were you while you were home for a few hours before mom and dad got home from work when you were a kid. And similarly, that is what the judgment for believers is when it's God saying, how good of a child have you been? So that's what the judgment for believers will be at the end of days. The judgment for unbelievers will be much different because they're not in the family.
2 books.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that Daniel 7 even talks about that. And so does Revelation. So yeah, that's why we'll talk about both those passages. I'm now in the last 10 minutes, I'm going to talk about just very bare bones, the different ideas people have about 2 controversial issues. And then we'll be ready to tackle some Bible passages next week. But does anyone have questions or want me to back up and talk about anything for the cosmic and individual salvation stuff? Okay. For the cosmic salvation stuff, people have differences of opinion about Christ's millennial reign. It talks about how long is Jesus going to rule here on earth before we sort of transition to paradise and eternity. People have different ideas about that. So I'm going to list these things here. If you don't have to memorize them. I'll make reference to them as we go through the Bible passages in the coming weeks. I just want you to have them in your mind, or you can forget about them or whatever. Some people say Jesus, when he comes back, he will rule for 1,000 years and then the final great battle and destruction, then eternity in paradise. That's called premillennial, meaning Jesus will come back before the millennium and trigger it. He comes back, bam, the literal 1,000-year reign begins. That's premillennialism. Another view that probably most Christians hold is that there is no 1,000 years. It's just a symbolic number. Jesus is ruling and reigning in the hearts of his people through the churches that are around everywhere, being salt and light to the world. And at some point, we don't know when, Jesus will simply come back and paradise and everything else, judgment, paradise, Satan thrown in the lake of fire and everything, and then eternity.
What did those people do with the idea of Satan being turned loose after 1,000 years?
Well, they say that Satan, I'll talk about that when we get to it. But yeah, so our church believes there's actually going to be a literal 1,000 years that Christ will reign. So that's where we land. That's where our church lands. Amillennialists see a lot of symbolism. The 1,000 years, it's just a big number that indicates it's going to be a long period of time. Revelation 20 is the big passage that talks about the 1,000 years of Satan being bound and then being let out after 1,000 years to reap destruction and whatnot. And they do not, for reasons I'll get into later, they just don't believe they don't believe we should take it that is literally is all that, and that Jesus is ruling and reigning now in the hearts of his people, churches big and small all over the world. And this millennium, quote unquote, is going to end when Jesus just suddenly comes back one day and implements his kingdom and transitions right over to eternity. Post-millennialists, so amillennialists, it's Greek, so means none. So there is no millennium. Like atheist, theist. There is no God. So that's what amillennial means. There is no millennium. Post-millennials believe that Jesus will come back at the end of a period of great worldwide peace. So things are going to the Christianity will influence the world more and more and more, and will be on an upward trajectory until Jesus comes back to sort of put the icing on the cake. This was really big before World War One, when millions of people died in a terrible war. It's not that big anymore, but some people are very passionate about it because the world is not getting better. I mean, the world's not getting better, right? There is no upward trajectory. There's kind of a downward trajectory. But the idea is the nations will believe in Jesus more and more and more. And as more people believes in the gospel, it will usher in a long, maybe 1,000 years, maybe not, period of increasing worldwide peace, which is the millennium. And then at the end, there will be a brief apostasy, but Jesus will come back and set things right. It's not that popular now. Most people you'll talk to will believe in some kind of premillennial. Jesus will come back before the millennium and then rule and reign for 1,000 years, or there is no millennium. Those are the two big options that are out there about the cosmic salvation stuff. Does anyone have any questions about that? Everyone is just speechless. Okay, fine.
You told me to wait for the answer to lie.
Oh yeah, that's true. You did ask a question. That when I say we'll talk about that later, that's really code for I have no idea. I'll figure it out later.
And I'm gonna have a lot of questions when you start getting in.
I shouldn't have revealed that was my secret. So if I ever tell you, that's really good, we're gonna cover that soon, that's me saying, I have no idea what the answer is, and I'm gonna pretend. Okay, so the last thing I'll talk about is a few things about how Christians differ about the timing of the resurrection of the dead. So the rapture, right? So I'll talk about people have different opinions about this, about when the dead will be resurrected and the living will be caught up to be with the Lord forever. Premillennialists, Jesus comes back when? Before or after the millennium?
Before.
Before. He will come back, trigger 1,000-year reign. Premillennialists believe the dead are resurrected in two stages. Stage one, Jesus is going to come back, and the bodies of all the dead believers will be resurrected and united to their souls. This is the rapture. Jesus comes back. All of the dead believers who have ever lived are caught up together to meet him in the air. And that's stage one. Stage two is at the end of the 1,000-year reign, when all the unbelievers will be resurrected and then immediately ushered into the day of judgment. So two stages. All the believers brought up to be with Jesus before he starts reigning for 1,000 years. Stage two, all the unbelievers resurrected at the end to immediately face judgment. The amillennialists, so the Presbyterians across the street, I'm sorry, those guys are premillennialists, never mind. So whatever. A lot of other Christians don't believe there's a millennium. So it's really simple. One day, Christ is going to come back, resurrect everyone at once, judge people, and then bam, off to paradise. New heavens and new earth come. Very simple. He'll come back, everyone's resurrected, believer, unbeliever, doesn't matter. Everyone's resurrected, judgment, off to the new heavens and the new earth, heaven and hell, and we're finished. It's really simple. I mean, there's not much more to say.
So does an unbeliever just go to hell?
Yeah.
Then
Jesus comes back,
separated?
everyone's resurrected, unbelievers are judged and sent to hell. Believers are judged on how faithful they were, and then the new heavens, new earth, and we're in paradise with the Lord forever. Very simple, really simple. Post-millennialists who believe things will get better, the gospel will be believed more and more and more until Jesus will come back, is pretty much looks the same as the other one. Jesus will come back, everyone will be resurrected, everyone will be judged, and we'll sort of transition into the new heavens and the new earth. So I don't know how confusing that was for everyone. I hope it wasn't too confusing. I hope we focus on the core things, the three things that every Christian needs to believe about cosmic salvation. The good, that's really good stuff. Everyone should believe that. And we can all get together on that. And the four things everyone needs to believe about individual salvation. What everyone wants to talk about and what everyone writes books about and what everyone argues about and what everyone's passionate about are those disagreements that I just summarized in 10 minutes. That's what everyone wants to talk about, and not the bottom line stuff that covers almost that is extremely exciting. And the passages that that we're going to be talking about over the 12, 13 passages we're going to be talking about, they'll help us to love God more, to be more and more certain just in our own hearts about the bottom line stuff that we mentioned. And as a bonus, it'll help us fill in the blanks and come to some good conclusions about the disputed stuff. Is there going to be a millennium? Is Jesus actually going to rule and reign for 1,000 years, or is it just figurative? When will believers, what evidence in the Bible gives about when believers will be caught up to meet the Lord in the air and be with him forever? When will that happen? Does the Bible tell us? Or does it just give us hints and we have to choose the least bad option? You know, because
That's
there's,
the word I don't like. They have to choose.
oh, we
Because
have,
why do some people have the idea that we're going to get to choose what God's going to do?
well, yeah, I understand. What I meant was, some things in the Bible are extremely clear, like God exists, Jesus is real, he was born of a virgin. Other things are not quite as crystal clear, like all the fine details about when and how exactly all believers are going to be caught up together in the air to be with Jesus. You know, so I mean, it is going to happen. That's crystal clear, but the timing and the when, that's one of those things that's not nearly as like ironclad sure as Jesus is born of a virgin by a miracle of the Holy Spirit. So when I say we have to choose the least bad option, I mean, we might not have enough evidence to be really dogmatic one way or another about the timing. We can be dogmatic about the fact it's going to happen, and we should be looking forward to it. But the timing, it's one of those things where we may have to agree to disagree, or we may have to look at the evidence and say, you know, I can't be certain, but it looks like the evidence suggests a little stronger for this instead of that. So that's what I meant when I said that.
Why did God leave it that way? Does he want us to be focused more on our faith and what's going to happen? Or
Yeah.
does he want us to have lots of good, deep discussions about what we're going to choose? Or
No, I think that in Deuteronomy 29:29 is a really important verse where it talks about Moses says he's finished talking about a difficult subject, and he says, listen, you're responsible for what the Lord has told you about. There are a whole bunch of secret things that we don't know about, but that's God's business. So if he wanted us to know about the timing, he would have made crystal clear what it was, but he wanted us to make sure we really understood about who Jesus is. He's born of a virgin by a miracle of the Holy Spirit, that we're made righteous. He declares us to be righteous by putting faith in him. You know, all the core stuff. That's the stuff the Lord led people to really write in excruciating detail about, so we could know. So if we don't have as much detail about something we would like, that probably means the Lord doesn't think it's quite as important as some other stuff. Doesn't mean we don't need to care, but it does mean we should put it into some perspective.
Well, we ought to recognize that there are going to be consequences for not accepting him.
Yeah. I mean, to keep the main thing the
kind of
main
recognize
thing.
what's happening, starts to happen, necessarily all of the
Hey,
mechanics.
funny story about that.
And
Most awesome feeling I've ever had in my life. I was watching a preacher on TV one Sunday, and I was homesick, church, and I fell asleep. And I woke to the sound of the shofar sounding.
mhm.
Just like it was just blowing you out of the place. And I sat there and I just knew that when I opened my eyes, Christ was going to be standing there. And with my eyes, and another show would come on TV, and it was a Jewish service.
Whoops.
Here,
But it was such
So
a.
you had an idea what was happening, but
So the thing,
Yeah.
I opened my eyes and Christ is going to be standing there, you know, it just.
if you want, now Jesus does, like, the Bible does tell us, and then we're finished. The Bible does tell us really explicitly about signs for, what the end of the age is and how we know it's coming. Matthew 24 and 25, and 2 Thessalonians 2 are the key passages that talk about that. It doesn't give us, of course, it doesn't give you all the detail you want, like a 500-page book about all the answers, all the questions you have answered. But those are the two passages that are in our list, that Matthew 24 and 25 and 2 Thessalonians 2, that really tell us about what to look for and what the signs are, so we can understand the times that we live in, or when the bad times are going to be coming. But so that's my bare bones, bottom line stuff, and some words of caution and warning to help us understand how to interpret some of this stuff. And next week we'll dive into some Bible passages. So we're going to start in Daniel 2. We're going to do 4 passages in Daniel. Daniel 2, 7, 8, and 9. So Daniel chapter 2, really just like 10 verses of it, but Daniel chapter 2. So if you want to read Daniel chapter 2, come with any questions you have, and we'll talk about it next time. We're going to focus on the beasts. No, not that, that's 7. We're going to focus on the statue and what the different parts of the statue mean, and what God's trying to tell Nebuchadnezzar in this vision, and what that means for us. But Daniel chapter 2, so you can read that ahead if you like.